So this is the first Forge app with .NET, and we're going to deploy this app on App Harbor. And my name is Augusto Gonçalves. I'm a developer advocate at Autodesk. So the idea is we're going to start by App Harbor. So I have here my account. I already have signed in using my account, and I'm going to your applications. The reason we're coming from App Harbor is that we have somewhere to deploy it, and we don't want to set up Git after that. So let's create here and then clone that on the local computer, so the local copy of that. So that's a Forge basic sample. Let's create, and that's our new sample. Let's go to repository URL and let's click here. It was copied. So let me go to Visual Studio, and I'm going to clone a project that is coming from App Harbor, and that's going to be copied on my local computer, and let's clone it. This solution is coming as an empty solution. So now I can see that the repository was cloned successfully. Let's create a new project solution for that repository. So let's create a new one, and ASP.NET Web Application. Let me call it Forge Basic Sample. And I'm not going to select any option here, Web Form, MVC, Web API. I'm just selecting empty. That way you can use the same steps that are coming right after to add Forge support on your application, whether it's a Web Form, MVC, or Web API. So let's click OK. And I have my solution here. If I go to Solution Explorer, so that's the basic solution. There is nothing here. So let me go to Tools and NuGet Packages, Manage Packages, and I can browse for Autodesk Forge. As I typed it before, it's already here. Let's select. That's the project where I want to place this reference, and let's also select the version of the reference and hit install. That the Autodesk Forge is also using Newtonsoft and REST Sharp. Those are very common libraries on .NET to handle REST calls. So let's hit OK. And the packages will now be added to this project, and I can see what happened at the package.config. I can see Autodesk Forge, Newtonsoft, and REST Sharp right here. Next thing, we're going to now add a web form for my application, so that way you can also add a web form to your existing app. So let me first let me add a new thing that we are going to need here, and let's add a config in file, and where is web config? So let me call it web.keys.config. So that's where we're going to place our .NET Forge client ID and secret. So let's place it in here. So here I have this file. So I'm not going to type the whole thing here. So I'm just going to copy, and so this is my the piece that I need. So here I'm going to place my Forge client ID and secret. So let me go to Forge, and I have my apps. I can create a new one, or I can use an existing one. Just make sure you are using data management and model derivative. So this is my client ID. Let me copy right here. And my client secret, let me show and copy right here. Okay, so why am I putting this client ID and secret here? Because I don't want to send that to anyone. I don't want to commit that to my server, right? So let me go to my web config, and instead of using the client ID from this file, I'm going to place the web keys config here. And as you can see, it's using from web keys config, but it's not set in here. Okay, so the next thing will be so that's an interesting trick, is to come back to my project and go to the settings of my project and go to git ignore and add this file. So web.keys.config. That way I don't commit my keys to any server. I just have that on my local computer, right? So I will not commit those. So that's the git ignore. Let me close here. So this web.keys.config is now on my git ignore, so it's not going to commit. And here's the files that I'm using. And here I can place my keys, and that will only exist on my computer. So if I commit that to my repository, will not be there. Interesting solution for that, to handle that piece. So let me come back to my web config. There is something that you may want to change. The .NET engine is not prepared to handle big files and upload. So let's increase this size of files, so that way you can upload bigger files, right? So let me save this. Okay, time to go back to our project and start doing something, right? Let's go to a web form and create a web form here. So that will be the default. Okay, and that's my basic UI. I'm not going to spend time creating a very nice interface. I'm pretty sure you have that on your application. So let me come here and just select a file that I want to upload and a button. And let's go to properties of that button and say upload and translate. So that's everything, all that I'm going to do here. And at the very bottom, not at the very bottom, at the bottom of the page, I want also to place a div. So if I go to the ID, I will say that this is Forge Viewer. So that's at this div, I'm going to show the model translated. So here I'm going to select a file that will trigger the upload and translate process. And then when it's done, I'm going to show on this div here. So let's go to this upload and translate method. So it's not my goal here to add everything that I need, type everything. So I'm just going to copy and add some pieces. You can always pause the video and see what's going on. The first piece is I need this to be async. That's actually a good practice on .NET. That way you can free resources on the server when you are not using that. But that may show some errors. So let's go back to our ASP.NET and say that this is async equals true. That way my page can handle async calls, right? So let's come back here. And as I said, I'm not going to type everything, but later when we are debugging the code, I'm going to show piece by step. Okay, so let me type my code here. It's not formatting well. So let me just, format these hits when code doesn't format. So that's the whole thing that I need. Let me add the missing namespaces. So system.io to handle directories, and this is the Autodesk Forge piece. As I said, let's review this later. And that's the other package that I'm missing. Model 2, anything else? Oh yeah, we need this base 64. So let me get this last piece at the very bottom of our page. And here it is. Okay, we're going to debug this and run through this code step by step. So don't worry at this point. And let's come back here. And the next thing will be to create a script file where we're going to handle our .NET, the JavaScript version of the viewer, right? So let's come back to the Forge one and actually to the basic one and create a new folder. Let's call it scripts. That's a very common approach on .NET, right? So let's say and add a file here that will be a JavaScript file, and that will be Forge Viewer. So that's our Forge Viewer. Okay, so I don't want to reinvent the wheel using the Forge Viewer, so let's go back to the Forge and go to Viewer. There's a lot of tutorials here, and that's one that I'm going to use is the Forge, the basic viewer. So if you expand here, you see the entire HTML JavaScript to run this. So let's copy the JavaScript. I know you can place this JavaScript on the ASP page, but that's not a good practice, right? So what I'm going to change is I'm going to rename this piece. Instead of this running at the beginning, let's create a function, right? So let's say show model passing the URN. So every time we have a project, we have a file hosted on Autodesk, this file actually have a URN. So let me use the URN here. And at this point, I'm going to call the Autodesk token. So this is the token we need. The token is actually a REST call, and I cannot really use a ASP page for it because the page will need to refresh on the server. So let's create a web API endpoint that we are going to call Forge API Forge token. That's where we can place this call. So let's just make sure the Forge viewer is using this get token, and we're going to create a API Forge token, and that cannot be a web form because it's just a REST endpoint. And as you can see, I'm passing false here because this must be a synchronous call, cannot be asynchronous. So that's why I'm using this approach. You can replace this with JSON, with jQuery if you want, but you know it's just a way of doing that. So let's create the Web API piece. Web API is supported on .NET, ASP.NET. So for organization, let's create a controllers folder where we are going to place our Web API. So add controller. It's very simple. And well, it's a Web API controller empty, and hit add. Let's call it token controller, and wait for it. Okay, so that's just because I have a new packages now, and those packages are listed on the package config. So that's the very clean API controller. I don't want to have anything else here, just a very basic piece of a controller. So let me place this here. So that's the API token. Again, we are going to debug this code later. So let's come back to the code right after. Okay, so we're going to come back here. Okay, so let me hit a breakpoint there, and let's also set up a breakpoint here. So what else do we need? Every time you create a web API, it's going to add this web API config, and this is the plain router. This is default API routing. We can leave this here or just remove. The piece that we really need is this map HTTP attributes routes. So this is actually scanning the whole project and getting everything that is implementing the API controller. So I will probably see that this is being configured at the global ASX file. So this is preparing the web API and registering everything. So if I can see that this is the main one, and this is my token controller. So those are the files that I need to make this sample work. It should be all. So let's see. I have here a way to debug my code. So let's see if that will work, hopefully. So I have I have a problem here. So I have the breakpoints set. I have a problem, so let's fix this. Oh, it's just missing one reference, one namespace. Okay, so let's try again. Oh, okay, sorry, we're missing one piece here. We're missing one piece. So let me come back here. I was almost forgetting this one. So let's go back to the default. And here I can put a title, nothing fancy, Forge viewer, but I need the JavaScript and CSS for the Forge viewer. So let's come back to the tutorial, and it's saying at the beginning, add those files to your project, and I missed those, right? So let's come back here, and so this is a JavaScript, the 3GS and viewer from Autodesk, and we also need the CSS. Let's also place the CSS here, And we also need to add our file, not like that. Let's add right here. So this is our file, which have our code, the Forge viewer, the 3GS, that is a library that we use, and the style that we have. So let's just format. Everything looks fine now, and let's debug. And if I go to tools, I can see the Chrome developer tools. This is always very handy to see how our code is running. So let's pick a file. I'm going to select a very simple file and upload and translate. That should hit the breakpoint. So let's see what's going on here. The first step, I'm going to create a bucket key. I don't want to have a duplicated name, so I'm using Forge app plus some random characters. So that's a new GUID with the letters and numbers on the GUID. Next thing, I'm going to get the file from the desktop, right, from the machine, and upload to the server, not to Forge, but to app data on my file. And I'm going to create a directory on my server and upload the file to that location. I just have to make sure the folder exists and then save the uploaded file there. Next thing is to get a token from Autodesk. That token is a token we need to create bucket, create data, write and read data. And what's missing here? So let's try again. What am I missing? How should be? It's okay. References, Autodesk Forge. So let's try again. So let's select a file, DWF, and upload. What am I missing? So there are references over there. Oh, there is a missing reference. There is a missing reference right here. The same. So let's see. What are we missing? Yes, so it's using. Yeah, it's using an older version of this Newton soft. I know I was just comparing to one other project that I have, so that's why. So if you have this problem, now you have a solution. Now we know what's going on. So let's come back to package management. That's the Newton software. That's the version that is installed. That's the latest one. So let's select here and install the newest version. Okay, I don't know why I installed this older version, but yeah, it happens. Okay, fix it now. Let's hope it's fixed. And so let's launch on the page. Let's select this here and come back with the developer tools, upload and translate, and now it's working. Okay, so this is the two-layer authentication. That's the web. This web config manager app settings is getting the settings from the web config. So that's why we set this here and using the keys that we just excluded from our project. So the next step, so now that I have a token, you see it's taking some time to process that. That's why it's a wait, because it's requesting and getting the response. That's why you have now the wait and a sync over here. Next step is to create a bucket. So that's my bucket key. That's the name of the bucket we're going to create on Autodesk. The bucket will be transient, and we're just going to create. The same thing happens, so it's making the call and waiting for the reply. On Autodesk, we have to upload a file that's actually an object. So we are going to use the same access token to upload the file. You see here that we are going to read the stream of the local file that we have and then upload that. Sorry, not the local file, the file that is on our server. So we got the file from the client to our server and then from our server to Autodesk. So that's what will happen here. So now the file is on Autodesk. And the next thing is we have the ID of the file, but that ID is not base64 encoded. So our next step will be to convert that file to base64. That's why I'm using this function here. That's not something that I created. I got this from Stack Overflow, so you can follow this and see how they did it. So that's getting the object ID and converting that to, so that's the object ID, should appear here. And I'm going to convert that to base64. So that's the base64 version of the object ID. Here I'm going to prepare the payload to translate the file. So I'm going to translate this file to SVF, which is the format for the viewer, and I'm going to extract both 3D and 2D views. You can just extract 2D or 3D if you want. And that's the payload. That's the translation that we are doing. So the base64 version and the output, that's how we want SVF, right? So we use the derivative API to make the translation and post the translation job. Again, it's an async process. So the translation can take up to a few seconds to a couple minutes. So as this is a very basic one, I'm going to keep asking if the translation is ready until I get a translation ready. So I'm getting the manifest from this file, and the manifest has a lot of information on it, but I'm interested on the progress information from the manifest. So if I look at the manifest, I can see the progress and it's now complete because that was a very simple translation. So I'm just doing some checks on this information and just getting the number. So if the progress is a number like 50%, I'm getting the number 50. Otherwise, I'm getting the number 100 because it's complete, so it's done. Okay. I put this try catch here because sometimes the translation is not ready and this call may fail. So I just want to keep asking until the translation is ready. So I can see now that the progress is 100%. So I know the file is ready. So I want now my client to show that model. So I have here the base64 URN. So I'm going to send a message to my page to run a script, a JavaScript code that is show model passing the URN. And just for cleanup, I'm going to remove all the files that I have on my server. So let's continue. So now my page will load, but when the page loads, it asks for the token. So the token, again, I'm going to ask Autodesk for a token, but that token must be only data read. I don't want to pass write enabled token to the client, right? So the write enabled token was just on the server, and now to the client, I can send a data read token. So that's what I'm requesting here. So let's call the get token again, but just data read. And That's a very simple one, as we did here at our JavaScript. I'm just requesting, getting the response, and that is the token already. So I don't want to parse a JSON or XML, nothing like that. I just want to return plain text. So that's why I'm changing the response here and getting the access token and returning that as a plain text instead. So that's a very basic plain text that I'm going to return to the client. So F5 should prepare the viewer and launch it. Okay, so I have another problem, which is no. So I need to specify the size of the viewer. So that's what I'm missing here. Here. So yeah, for viewer div. So style. I don't want to pass something. So you can pass any number that will be according to your style. So I don't want to adjust that, and so that's why it's complaining about the width of the viewer, right? So let's see, double check if you did everything right. Yeah, I know what the problem is. Actually, don't need this because that will assume. So that was my problem here. And well, when I copied this file from the tutorial, I copied and I changed the token, but I missed changing the viewer, the ID where the viewer is going to show. So let me use that one. Okay, so that's a very basic sample. I don't want to, I will not do it, I will not reload. It's just doing one at a time. So I have to upload and translate again, but you can just improve that on your end to make a very more complex sample. So I don't want to do this again. And well, it takes some time to upload, translate the file again, and then it should appear the file. Just wait for it. It's reloading the page, getting the token again. And that's the viewer launching. Very simple. Okay, so now that we have the project running on my local computer, so let's finish publishing this sample. So here I can come back to the Team Explorer and I can go to my repository and see the changes. So as this is the first time that I'm working with this project, it's asking me to enter my name. So it links all my changes to my name. Okay, so type my name here. So that's my first commit, and I'm going to commit and push to the app harbor. Everything that I did, I don't want to make changes here. So let's go back to app harbor and let's go to the first page of my project. So I can see that I have my first commit here. This is not deployed yet, so I can just well, while we can wait for this to finish. Let's wait a few moments and let's go back to settings, and I have to make a couple of changes here. So as I'm uploading files to app data, I have to enable file system write, so that will allow my application to write to app data. And yeah, that's basically it. And if I go back to the basic page, I can see that everything is there. I can now deploy. So this sample is now being built. I have to wait until it's ready. While this is running, let's go to configuration files. As I said, I don't want to keep my Forge client ID and secret on the desktop and on the server, because that can share that with someone else. And also I need different keys and for my debug and release. And if you put that on your web config, you have to redeploy, so that's a problem. So that's why it's better to do it via configuration variables. So I can now add my configuration variable for client ID, and you can select, you can put a different key, or in this case, let me just use the same one. App harbor, get the key, but ideally you have different keys for local and in production. You don't want to use the same for both environments, right? So let's add a new one, forge client secret, and that's my ID. So those are my two variables. If I come back here, I can see that the application was deployed and is active, and I can now go to my application. Sometimes it just take a while to process, but I think it's ready. So that's my application running on App Harbor. Very quick and easy, like a few minutes, and I can then select a file and upload and translate. As this is uploading from my computer, now it's actually from my computer to Autodesk. Okay, so why is this happening? I had this before. It's just happening because the application is really not ready to run, and yeah, so you just have to wait until it's ready. So that's why it may take a while to run. So so as I know this may take some time. Let's try again. Maybe it's already ready. It just takes some time to be ready to use. Yeah. Settings. Track. If I go to log, you see there is nothing wrong there. Yeah, nothing wrong. Variable was added. Worker, client ID, client secret. Those are my variables here. Let's go back to settings and let's try again. Let's see if everything was ready here. It's enabled. Rename environment. Okay, let's try again. I had this before. Just take some time to finish, but I'm just double checking if everything is ready. Yeah, it seems to be running now. So as I'm doing everything on the same page, so I have to upload, translate, and wait for the translation to complete. That's why it takes some time. But you see, it's now running. It just takes some time for App Harbor to really deploy everything and make sure everything is working. Probably something related with the variables, and but it's still really fast. So yeah, I think that's it. So I have my project on a local computer deployed to App Harbor and working online. Great, thank you.